Welcome to the ANF in Oz channel. I'm currently still in the UK and just a mere 31 days away from flying to the wonderful land of Australia for a working holiday visa. None of my vlog style adventures that I'm planning to do in this one, unfortunately, more of an educational one. And today I'm going to be talking about the English requirement for visas from the Department of Home Affairs in Australia and my experience doing the tests. First and foremost though, please get yourself a M.A.R.A agent. That's a person who's solely focused on making sure that you, your family, everybody that you want to move across to Australia are getting the best possible chances and opportunities to make sure that move is possible. As long as you feel like you should be desirable for a move to Australia, a M.A.R.A agent will help you through that process and help you with multiple visa options rather than you only fixating on one specific one because that's the one that you've read about. That's my number one recommendation. There are 5 levels of English ability and literacy that the Department of Home Affairs recognise. Those are functional, vocational, competent, proficient, and superior. Superior will give you the maximum amount of points on all visa types, and that's what you should be aiming for. If you get proficient or competent, don't stress about it too much, as they will still provide you a healthy number of points for your expression of interest or for your direct visa application types. Depending on how many points you need to add on and bulk on, they may impact it. First and foremost, if you're taking one of these tests from one of these 5 providers, please don't waste the time between booking the test and there and just expect that you're going to do a good result, because it is out of your own expense, it is your own time, and it is ultimately in your best interest to do as best as possible. So study for these tests. There are 5 recognised suppliers by the Department of Home Affairs for independent tests outside of the government themselves, so they have that third party to qualify you for those visas. Those being the International English Language Testing System, known as IELTS. You've got the Pearson Test of English, the PTE. I've took both of those, and that's what I'll talk about a little bit further, my experience on those slightly later in the video. Check the chapters out. The remaining ones I haven't taken. Those other ones are Cambridge English, also known as the C1 Advanced or the CAE. You've got the Occupational English Test, the OET, and please note that this is only for healthcare providers. And finally, the Test of English as a Foreign Language. That's the whole name of it. It feels like it's missing stuff off the end of that, but that is known as the TOEFLIBT. That's a mouthful. I'm glad I'm not doing that. Or never did that, because that would be really hard to explain. What I'll do is in the description I'll leave the official immigration link so you can read a bit more about what the current requirements are. You got to remember, with YouTube videos, they are timestamped and fixed in a period. So this is just turning into June 2024. It could change in the next financial year, it could change next month, could change in the next government. So please check that link and get the latest advice directly from the government. I've been racking my brain of how to phrase this next bit, so let's just go for it. Before I go into the negatives and how I can see the current testing system improved and my experiences of those 2 tests, the Pearson and the IELTS, I want to emphasize and express I see the absolute benefit of the English proficiency test for Australian life and people who are currently living on Australia. I think it will provide people coming into the country who are speaking English. They can contribute from day one in terms of fitting into a new job or role or services, police officers, doctors, nurses, salespeople, manufacturers, and even students. It makes sure that that barrier for language is essentially not fully eradicated, but it's a lot less abrasive for those migrants coming across Australia. So I do 100% see the benefit of this test. It makes complete and logical sense. Now, I think the current testing system for both PTE and IELTS are stuck in an era. They were developed quite clearly in the early 2000s, probably mid 2000s to be honest, and they haven't evolved since then. I do like it's all digitized now. That for me is a really good logical step. But the requirements are for somebody to have proficiency in 4 key areas: reading, writing, listening, and speaking. So on paper and in person. That's how you can nicely split it down. Can you listen to a conversation and then have a natural flowing conversation back to them? Can you listen and speak? And then same vice versa. Can you read a chapter, a paragraph, and a work email and then respond accordingly? That's what those tests are essentially built to cover. Each test provider scores it slightly differently. Just got the results up here. So for Pearson, my results for listening was 78, for reading was 80, for speaking was 85, and writing was 70. But that meant my overall score was 76, which means proficient on the immigration score. The reason I've took another one, so I've took the IELTS after taking the Pearson. I took the Pearson in April 2022. Yes, 2.5 years ago. And I've took the other one, the IELTS, in May this year. And that's because when I'm moving across on the working holiday visa, when I get there, I wanted to have that 3-year buffer again. If other migration options come up, then I'm not panicking and doing another test last minute and stressing about that whilst I'm enjoying my life in Australia. So I've got now a 3-year buffer on my IELTS score. Speaking of my IELTS score, the scores on that one are slightly different. Listening of 8.5, a reading of 9, a writing of only 6, and like I said, I'll explain writing in a second, and a speaking of 8.5, which makes my overall score a 8 and a CEFR of C1. I'm not sure what that actually means, but that's what it says on the report. I think it's good. Now, let's compare the Pearson, the PTE, with the IELTS. The Pearson, you take all 4 sections in a row, back to back, sat at one computer. This can take, depending on how long you take to do the sections, anywhere between 3 to 4 hours. You're allowed an hour per section, so some people will do sections slightly faster than what's mandated. You've got the reading, writing first, and then the listening, and then speaking. What I found really bizarre about this one, you rock up early in the morning. I went to the Wolverhampton Centre for that one back in 2022. You go into there about 8:30 in the morning. You wait around for everybody else to turn up and register, and then you go into the room and you just sat there doing the test, and then you leave and you got to wait. I think it's 10 working days, so about 2 weeks for your results to come back. In that test room, you've got, when it comes to the speaking part, you've got so many people around you that you're trying to respond to a question and it's really hard to like focus on it. Now, I know I got a decent score on the speaking side of it for that, but I can see it being really confusing when you're trying to have a conversation and somebody else is chirping up in the background. So I think the test environment for Pearson is not conducive for people to succeed. That can definitely be improved. The writing side of it is echoed in the IELTS. In the IELTS, it's split into 2 parts of a day. So instead of doing everything in half a day like you do with a Pearson, you do it in morning, afternoon. You do in any order, the written side of it. So the reading, writing, and listening sections on a computer in a test environment, and that is essentially 3 solid hours. The first section's I think 45 minutes, and the other 2 are an hour apiece. So you just sat at a computer staring, and I think that again, if you've ever done a 3-hour test, it's just so hard to focus for that amount of time. It's very important, and you can absolutely do it, but to maintain a absolutely high energy level of ensuring you have that throughout those 3-4 hours, for me is quite a struggle. I like to, when I'm working, work in like 20 to 30-minute chunks and then have a drink, have a cup of tea, kind of pop, whatever. It like tests for me, I think, are one, they are productive, but if they could split them down into more manageable sections and allow like people little breaks to just prepare themselves for the next question, I get it, it's a test, but that's just a personal preference. And then with the IELTS, the speaking side of it is completely different. It's a one-to-one meeting with an adjudicator in a interview room. It could be just a small box room. What happens with that side of it is completely different to the Pearson, whereas Pearson is just responding to like a voicemail or a call conversation and then having that back and forth on the computer. You have this in person. As soon as you walk into the room, the person turns on the recorder, you introduce each other, and then the adjudicator, the assessor, reads out what the conversation and what to expect from the next 10-15 minutes is going to going to determine your score. The conversation will naturally grow and progress based on how that initial introduction goes. There's a preset pamphlet that they will randomly pick before you come into the room and try and get you to have a natural, good conversation around that subject. For me, it was food. I've heard other stories about sports and events, music, horticulture, literature. Like it could be literally anything. So one bit of advice on that is please don't prepare any kind of script in your head, because that person does choose the subject randomly, and I think it is wholly designed to make sure that you can have a natural conversation with somebody in English. You don't have to be like absolutely proficient in it, like it is one of the scores, but you don't have to like have a perfect vernacular in that conversation. As long as that conversation naturally grows and the person can understand you and you're not overly inserting frivolous words that don't necessarily come across as clear and concise to that conversation, just because you use a word that is stronger than most people's normal vernacular, then you are you're trying to emphasize too much in that one conversation. So the Pearson speaking test could be improved. I think that one-to-one meeting, that 15-minute interview, essentially is the perfect way of doing the speaking element. The thing that desperately needs to be improved across both of those testings is the writing. And what I mean by that is, all it is for both of them is here's a question in two phases, phase one and phase two. You get a different word count. Because IELTS is most recent, I'll explain what the word counts are for phase one and two. Phase one in the IELTS is 125 words. I think I did like 245, and in the second section it's 250 words, and I did like 470. So I massively exceeded the word target on those. Like I said, it's a free text box, so you respond to the questions in a concise manner. It's an opinion piece, so they say, I'll come up with a fresh example rather than the one that was in the exam. What's your opinion on the UK general election, and will the general election improve life for the UK public? That's the kind of question it would ask, and then you would expect to go, yes, it's good, yes, it's bad, and then succinctly answer that question in those words. The reason I don't think that's really pertinent is because, one, I exceeded it, and I thought it was natural to exceed those word count suggestions. And secondly, the boxes are free text boxes, and there is no like red squiggly lines, there's no blue squiggly lines, there's no suggestion of where your grammar could be improved, and that is where modern society has allowed a lot of people to cope. So if you get your phone and start writing a text and you misspell something, it will auto correct that immediately. If you write an email in work, there will be those red squiggly lines on Gmail, on Outlook, wherever it is, to help you with that conversation. All you need to do is proofread. naked eye proofreading without those indicators to go, look, this doesn't look quite right. I think, yes, I understand it in a test environment, but nobody will ever 100% be perfect with every single punctuation point, capitalization, and spelling of niche words. So I think that side of it needs a little bit of modernization. If there is a autocorrector, then maybe just for, I don't know. I do understand it. I do understand it, but I think it's just, it doesn't really account for that kind of modern lifestyle of technology is adapted. Why would I need to be perfect in every single word I type in response to something? It That's not how natural conversations happen. And when you're sending an email, you have an infinite amount of time to compose yourself for that response. In this test, you're given maybe half an hour to come up with the perfect response. So I do understand a test environment will do that, but that needs improving from my perspective. Maybe you could do that in the actual visa application standpoint, or you could do that at point of entry. Can you write a fluid sentence in response to this? That's all you really need day to day. You don't need this. This is my opinion on the UK general election circa 2024. It's just so arbitrary and, like I said, archaic in ensuring that you can write properly. As somebody who's dyslexic, I know I can't, so I will try my best to make sure I'm adhering to that test standard. But I don't know until I get the result back if I've done what I've supposed to do. And in this example, I 100% answered the question. I answered the question in a composed manner, and I succinctly put a argument. Well, I repeated the question, so I made sure that I had the understanding of the question. I did a side for the wrong opinion, a side for my opinion, and then like what my true opinion is that is in a conclusion. So I think I structured it as succinctly as possible, but maybe it's the word count. I just think the feedback for that writing side needs to be improved for me to improve and make sure I don't mess up the score next time. Rant and tirade over. I hope you found that really, really helpful. If you have a specific question about your scenario, first see a Myrah agent. But if you're just wanting a quick bit of advice from somebody who's went through the process, pop a comment in there and I'll try and point you in the best direction that I think is suitable. I'm not a registered agent. Please take it with a pinch of salt. Like any other YouTuber's advice, there is it's just trying to help a community going through the same situation. So I'm not gospel. Do not take me as gospel, but I will try and help as much as I possibly can. And if you did find this helpful, please smash the like button. It does help more people find the video. And yeah, until next time. Bye-bye.